Today, we are going to build a hulking brute of a giant barbarian, discover the best new healer build in the game, and even work out what I think is the best new blaster caster in the game. All new builds for patch 8 of Baldur's Gate 3. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody. So here at D4, every week I take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them. I like to theorycraft about them. Not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you are just really into theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I am really glad you're here, so thanks for watching. My name's Colby. Right, so as you surely know by now, a month or so ago, Larian released what they're calling their final patch for Baldur's Gate 3, patch 8, and with it introduced a new subclass for every single class in the game. 12 new subclasses. Incredible. As a result, a couple of weeks ago, I put out my first Baldur's Gate 3 video in about a year on what I considered to be the two most popular subclasses of the bunch, the Bladesinger and the Hexblade. Check it out up here if you missed it. And not too surprisingly, I suppose, the video performed exceptionally well for me. So I felt like, okay, it looks like there's a little bit of an appetite for BG3 content still, and that made me really happy, honestly, because as much as I love Bladesingers and Hexblades, there are 10 other new toys to play with in this patch, and that is a lot of meat on the fun character builds bone, right, if you will. So I'm really happy to have an excuse to dive back in and do some more. So that's what we're doing today, but a word of warning. In the interest of time and in an attempt to cover as much ground as possible, I'm going to try and speed things up a bit here compared to last time so that we can squeeze one more build into the video. That means I'm going to assume that you kind of have a basic working knowledge of how the game works at this point, how like most of the kind of general class features work, or at the very least kind of how D&D works, so that I can move a little bit quicker and keep things a little more high level, not really stopping to explain every single feature of the build except for the most important and or new features, or maybe when something makes a really big departure from how it works in D&D, etc., etc. So if you need to consult the wiki here, please do so, or of course if you have questions, ask them in the comments down below, and hopefully I will see it, or someone else who's kind and knowledgeable will and can help you find an answer. Sound good? Okay then, let's get going because we've got a lot to cover as we are doing, yes, 3 new builds today in BG3 episode number 16, more amazing patch 8 builds. Sorry, boring title, I know. Gotta keep it simple for the clicks. The Giant, the Shadow, and the Chalice probably wouldn't perform as well for the algorithm. But first, welcome back to my room. Actually though, guess what? This isn't my bedroom. It is our guest room that we let like family sleep in when they come visit. Okay, so most of you probably know by now how much I love Helix mattresses, the sponsor for today's video. I've talked a lot about how much I love my mattress from them. It is truly the most comfortable mattress that I've ever owned. I've had it for about 6 months now, and I can honestly say that I love it more today than when I first got it. In case you didn't know, before you even order a mattress from Helix, they have you take a sleep quiz to help you figure out your body type and your sleep preferences so that you can get the perfect mattress for you. I took the test before I got my mattress, and I got matched up with the Sunset Luxe mattress. That's helped me get rid of lower back pain. That keeps me cooler at night. But today, I want to tell you about something new from Helix. Their new mattress toppers. So yeah, I love my mattress so much that part of me really wanted our guests to experience just how good it could be, but I wasn't quite ready to take the plunge and get another full mattress down here in the basement. So I decided to try out one of the new Helix mattress toppers on the bed down here instead. I looked over the options that were available and decided to go with the premium mattress topper with Glaciotex cooling as well. It combined steel microcoils with memory foam in a sort of hybrid best of both worlds, frankly, multi-classing kind of way, rather than just like coils or memory foam, right? I wanted both to give me both like a little plushness, and yeah, you can't go wrong with the Outtakes cooling, because I really feel like it helps me anyways stay a lot cooler at night when I sleep. And let me tell you, I love this bed now almost as much as I love my Helix mattress bed upstairs. In fact, I slept on this bed last night. We used to have just like a plain memory foam cover on this bed down here. And whenever I would sleep on it, I would just get like really hot. And I felt like I just kind of sank into it a little too much, you know? I feel confident that you will love the way that it enhances what you've already got. And right now is the best time to do that, because Helix is currently running a Memorial Day deal exclusive for partners like me, where you can get 27% off of anything on their site. And also, if you decide to purchase a Luxe or Elite mattress, not just the topper, right, then you can also get free bedding to go along with it. What a deal. But you've got to use my unique URL to get that, which I've got in the video description and in the pinned comment, as always. So please use that if you would when you check out. That way they know I sent you and you'll get the savings. As always, Helix has a 100-night sleep trial, even on the mattress topper. So place your order and you get more than 3 months to test it out and see if you like it. If you don't, which I have a hard time imagining, but you can send it back and get a full refund. Their mattresses have a 10-year warranty, and they even have financing options and flexible payment plans if you decide that you do want to keep it, which I feel confident that you will. So there's really nothing to lose here, and so much to gain. Oh, and shipping is free in the US. It comes rolled up in a box and is easy to set up, so stop putting it off. You could be sleeping a lot better than you are right now. All right, huge thanks to Helix. I really do love your stuff. Thanks for helping me sleep better. All right. Let's get back to the builds. All right, first up, what has easily become my favorite Barbarian subclass in the 2014 version of D&D 5e, the Giant Barbarian. Sorry, but 2024's new World Tree Barbarian is like the overall Barbarian subclass favorite here, I think, now, but Giant Barbarians are awesome. And as with so much in this game, they're even awesomer in BG3, and awesomer is totally a word. So, how do we build it? At level 1 for our starting class, yes, I'm going to say let's go Barbarian right from the beginning. We will be doing plenty of multi-classing as usual for me, but I think Barbarian's a great place to start, and we just want to beeline for our most important features. As with all of the builds today, I'm just going to say for your race, take your favorite. PYF, whatever makes the most sense for the character that you want to play. It's not going to have a huge impact on the build. As for starting ability scores, you're going to want to go with a 15 strength, a +2 there, a 15 constitution and a +1 there, and then a 14 dexterity. As for equipment, we're going to want to get like the best medium armor that we can and the best two-handed weapon. Now, as a Barbarian 1, we get a lot of great features. First up, Rage, which lets us use a bonus action to add 2 damage to all of our strength-based attacks and also gives us resistance to physical damage. It's super awesome. Gives us advantage on strength checks and saves, which will be important for this build. And, we can use it twice per long rest for now. We also get the unarmored defense feature here, but we will be better off with medium armor right now. That could change later depending on what items you get to bump your stats, etc. But remember, there is some armor in game that's really just clothing, and so if you wear that, it can give you some benefits from the item itself and also let you take advantage of unarmored defense. So watch out for those kinds of things, because yeah, it will bump our AC by our constitution modifier and our dexterity modifier, which is great. At level 2, barbarians get danger sense to get advantage on dexterity saving throws, and then one of the barbarians' best features, arguably their best feature, reckless attack, which lets us choose to have advantage on our attacks at the cost of giving enemies advantage on their attacks against us. I love how in BG3, you can wait to decide to use Reckless Attack until after you first miss, right? So that you don't necessarily have to give enemies advantage on their attacks against you until you know that you would miss your attack otherwise. It's so good. Oh, hey, before we keep going, did you know that today is my birthday? It is. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what I would love to have as a present? You. As a channel member or patron, that is. So huge shout out and thank you quickly to my channel members and my patrons. I could not do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much. Everybody else, I would really love it if you'd just consider joining as either a YouTube member or a Patreon patron, right? There's links in the video description on where to go to learn about, how to do that. It tells you about the perks that you can get by signing up. It's not super expensive, I hope. A couple bucks a month at the lowest tier anyways to get you access to like all of the perks that I offer. I would just ask that, you pay what you think it's worth or what you feel like you can afford if it's something that you want to do. Those perks include access to the library of write-ups that I do for all of my builds so that you can more easily create them yourself and won't have to take notes or anything, right? Access to the community Discord server and even access to the monthly live Q&A hangout sessions that we do. So thanks for considering. And if you are not interested or don't feel like you can do it right now, that's fine. I love that you're just here and watching and liking and subscribing. Those make great birthday presents too. So thanks for doing any and or all of those things. Okay, at level 3 here, our rage charges get bumped up to 3 per long rest. That's nice, but then importantly, we get our Barbarian subclass. And yes, of course, we're going with Giant. This subclass is so good and it's so fun. We get a couple features here at this level for it. First up, we get Giant's Rage. This replaces just our normal rage and makes it so that when we rage, we grow to large size. That's cool. And then we get our damage bonus doubled on thrown attacks only. So now, the throwing Berserker build that I actually went over on this video here a long time ago finally has a rival, I think. This is a buff here over the D&D version of this feature where it just says that we can add our rage bonus to a thrown weapon attack, which previously anyways was only allowed for melee attacks, right? Admittedly, doubling the rage damage from 2 to 4 here isn't anything crazy, but hey, it's a damage buff, and I'll take it. The Vaprak's Greed feature here simply increases our carrying capacity, which is, nice if you don't have a mod for that kind of thing. And then we also learned the Thaumaturgy cantrip to basically help us out in our social situations. One note here, as soon as you hit this level, you'll want to make sure to start using the Returning Pike that you can purchase from the vendor in the Goblin Camp early in Act 1 if possible. It'll be the best weapon in the game for the build at this point and is really easy to get so long as you've got the cash. At level 4, we get a feat, and we, of course, want the fabulously overpowered in Baldur's Gate 3 Tavern Brawler feat, which will increase our strength to 18, that's wonderful, or our constitution if you'd prefer, and then doubles our strength modifier for both the attack and damage rolls of our unarmed and thrown weapon attacks, which is just crazy, meaning that we would have a plus 10 to hit and a plus 12 to damage right now, thanks to Rage, on every thrown weapon attack, with no equipment enhancing buffs at level 4. That is so very strong. At level 5, we pick up extra attack as a Barbarian, which is nice, letting us make 2 what would be thrown weapon attacks now on our turn, right? And then we get fast movement for 10 more feet of move speed, and then as a Giant Barbarian, we get the brand new, amazingly satisfying, fun, and hilarious Boot of the Giants, which lets us use a bonus action to kick an enemy away from us. Okay, so here's how this works. This is not something that exists in D&D. It essentially works the same as shoving an enemy. It's a contested athletics check, right? Our athletics roll, including any bonuses, including advantage if we have it, right, against the enemies, meaning we love having advantage on strength checks from Rage, right? Make sure you get proficiency with athletics at level 1. I probably should have mentioned that. But then if we succeed on that shove check, right, which we almost always will, the enemy is not only pushed away from us for twice as far as they would normally be with a shove, but it also does damage. It does damage as though we had made an unarmed strike against the enemy then. So this is actually a fairly unique thing in BG3 where we're doing attack damage by making a successful ability check. And so, yeah, having Tavern Brawler, which doubles the damage from our strength modifier on unarmed strikes as well as thrown weapon attacks, right? This applies here, meaning we do pretty decent damage on this boot to the head. And it's also a fantastic way to get nearby enemies away from you so that you can then chuck weapons at them without disadvantage, right? To say nothing of booting them off cliffs or into lava, right? The best thing about it, though, honestly, is just how fun and satisfying it is to boot a goblin 20 feet away from you in game. I could do it all day and never get bored. Anyways, as good as that is, the best Giant Barbarian feature, though, is probably what comes at level 6. we get, as a giant barbarian, Elemental Cleaver, which lets us add an extra 1d6 of acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage to our weapon attacks. Fantastic for avoiding resistances or taking advantage of vulnerabilities, and then also gives our weapon, no matter the weapon, the thrown property, also causing the weapon to automatically return to us when it is thrown. And it is so dang fun to just hurl your favorite great axe or maul or greatsword in a big, like, overhead two-handed hurl every single attack and see it do massive damage. One note, this extra d6 of damage is actually causing an extra proc of rage damage and tavern brawler damage, as well as like other things in game that add damage to thrown attacks. So the increase in damage that we get is way more than just a d6. Though it does look like today, at the time of this recording anyway, they've fixed that a little bit in a hotfix to where it's not proccing tavern brawler damage twice, at least in honor mode. That I think is not the case for like other difficulty modes. I haven't tested it yet because it just barely came out before I started recording. But regardless, even in honor mode, if this is true, it's still really good, and it is still a lot more than just a d6 of damage. To the point where, yeah, we're actually competing with, if not surpassing, the thrown weapon damage that we get from a Berserker thrown weapon build. That is just getting like one more weapon attack with their bonus action, right? And as good as that is, with these damage increases that we're seeing from Giant, and the fact that we can still do a little bit of damage with our bonus action thanks to the boot to the head, it's a powerhouse of a build doing a lot, and it's really fun to boot. Ooh, pun intended, I suppose. Anyways, at level 7, yes, we could just keep going with Barbarian. The Mighty Impale feature is fun, but I think we get a little more out of a rogue multiclass here instead. I'm sure most of you know why, but let's assume we're going rogue. So as a rogue 1, we first up get a sneak attack to add some damage to our ranged or finesse weapon attacks, but unfortunately, we're not really going to get much out of it with this build. I suppose we could carry some finesse thrown weapons around with us to throw instead of our two-hander, but thanks to Elemental Cleaver and the fact that we have to just like apply that to like one weapon at a time, right? We'll get more out of just sticking with our main weapon here and being sad about missing out on sneak attack damage. It's okay. We also get Expertise as a Rogue One, which doubles our proficiency bonus for 2 skills that we are proficient in. And of course, we're going to take athletics here, meaning that now we have a +10 to our athletics checks and we have advantage on them too. So we should really be succeeding on pretty much every single boot. At level 8, we would be a Rogue 2 that gives us Cunning Action, letting us dash, disengage, or dodge as a bonus action. That's sometimes nice when we need it. Then at level 9, we would be a Rogue 3, giving us our Rogue subclass. And we, of course, are going to go with Thief, because thieves get, well, they get second story work to just reduce any falling damage that we might take. But then, yes, the also overpowered in BG3 Fast Hands feature, which just straight up gives us 2 bonus actions every single round, all the time, and it is amazing. A little less amazing for us than, say, the throwing Berserker, right? Or yeah, like the strength-based Tavern Brawler Flurry of Blows Monk, which I did a build for here. But getting to make 2 boots every single turn is just, it's not to be missed, people. And it's a decent damage bump too. So, okay, at level 10, you certainly don't have to do this, but I think I might just take a single level dip in Monk, because as a Monk 1, we'd get Martial Arts, and this tells us that, among other things, our unarmed strikes do not just 1 flat damage, but instead a d4 of damage, and that's not a crazy increase to our boot attacks, but it's something. And since we've gone out of our way to get 2 of them per turn, I figure we might as well make them as potent as possible. The other Monk features we get here, like Flurry of Blows to spend a key point and make 2 unarmed strikes, we probably don't use that much. Though, sure, if we'd rather do that once in a while to make 2 unarmed strikes with our bonus action, and especially since we have 2 bonus actions now, with Tavern Brawler, it would be more overall damage than a boot if we're not worried about shoving someone out of our face, right? A nice little burst damage option if we need it, though of course it costs key and we only have 2 key points per short rest, right? Still, not a bad little extra damage option. Okay, from this point in the build, levels 11 and 12, I can see a couple of ways to finish things off. Stay with Monk to get our unarmed strike damage up to a d6, plus a few more key points so that we can flurry of blows more often if we want, plus a little benefit from a subclass if we want it, right? Alternatively, there's always 2 levels of Fighter for Action Surge, which is probably going to be more burst damage than a couple more flurry of blows would be, letting us make 2 more thrown weapon attacks on our turn, once per short rest at least, right? It's very strong. Or, sure, go back to Barbarian for like Feral Instinct and for another feat so that we can pick up Savage Attacker so we can re-roll all of the damage dice on all of our attacks. Not just the weapon attack like in D&D, right? This would apply to things like Elemental Cleaver. I think that's probably the route I would go personally, but this is assuming, of course, that we don't need to bump our strength. There are a couple of really fantastic items in the game that will just set our strength score to be automatically above 20 even, or sure, elixirs that do the same if you've got a steady supply of them. So by late game, I tend to kind of just assume that we don't need to be using that feat to bump our strength to 20. But I mean, especially if you did need that, then yes, this is the route I would go, no question. It is so much fun to play with, just flinging enemies and then chucking stuff at them for massive damage. It just, yeah, it's a brute of a character and it never gets old to play. All right, let's totally switch gears now then and move on to what I think is currently the best healer build in all of BG3. Taking advantage of, yes, my favorite Druid subclass in all of D&D, the new and amazing Stars Druid. Okay, so level 1 for our Stars Druid. We are going to start off as a cleric. Oh, classic Colby. But seriously, for most of the early game for this build, we are actually going to be more like cleric with a Stars Druid dip. I just think that if we want to be the best healer we can possibly be, it's hard to avoid going cleric, or maybe lore bard like I did for my previous ultimate healer build, because the spell selection that druids get just isn't as good, especially in BG3 for healing. For our ability scores, start off with a 17 wisdom, take a +2 there, and then like a 15 constitution and a +1 there. Those are our most important stats. For our equipment, we're going to want the, best heavy armor we can get, a shield, and then like anything that will give us a bonus to healing, right? And yeah, that's one reason I wanted to start Cleric here, because at Cleric 1, we get to pick our subclass, and we are going to go with Life here, of course. And as such, we get heavy armor proficiency if we start at level 1 as a Cleric. Unlike in D&D, where you can just get heavy armor proficiency if you multiclass into Life Cleric later, right? So yeah, starting here is great, but also because as a Life Cleric, we get the fantastic Disciple of Life feature, which adds 2 plus the spell's level in healing anytime we heal with a spell, just really giving a nice bump to our heals right from the get-go. As for the spells to take at level 1, you're going to want Guidance, of course, for a nice utility like Catch-All bump, adding a d4 to ability checks. But then, we get Cure Wounds for free as a Life Cleric, which is nice. That's our best heal spell right now. I would grab Healing Word so that we could also heal with a bonus action, though it heals for less than Cure Wounds. You can do it from range too, which is nice. The Bless spell comes automatically, and I think that's what I'd be concentrating on for the first several levels, as it is a fantastic buff to add a d4 to the party's hit chance and saving throws. But then at level 2, we're going to want to take our Druid levels. At Druid 1, you just get Druid spells. And I'm just going to say PYF here, pick your favorites. There's not a lot that we need from a healing perspective anyways. Goodberry's fine, but it's not as strong as it is in D&D, I'd argue. And beyond that, sure, focus on utility and or control options like Entangle, etc. At level 3, we would then be a Druid 2, and that means we get Wild Shape so that we can turn into a beast, right? But we are not going to be using Wild Shape for that in this build, because yes, we also at Druid 2 get our subclass, and we are going to go with the Circle of Stars. Stars Druids are so awesome. They can use a use of their wild shape to take on a starry form instead of transform into a beast, right? And when we do this, it lasts all day, and then we get to choose from one of 3 starry form options that's going to buff us in one of 3 ways. The Archer form lets us make a ranged attack as a bonus action, and yes, There's definitely a damage build here, and I've built around it many times before in D&D, like this, for example. But then there's Dragon Form. This makes it easier to maintain concentration, and then actually gives us a sweet AoE cone-like dragon breath attack in BG3 that we can use to do some radiant damage. That's probably the better damage option now, actually, I think, and I'd love to try building around that sometime too, so maybe one day. But as a healer, we are most interested in the Chalice form, which says that when we cast a healing spell that consumes a spell slot, we get a free, usable ability called Chalice Healing that will heal for a D8 plus our Wisdom modifier. It doesn't cost our bonus action or our action, it's just a free action ability that becomes available to use every round when we cast a healing spell. Note that it must be a spell that uses a spell slot, so healing spells from items or other things like Paladin's Lay on Hands won't trigger this, right? Still, it's free healing, and assuming that this character is dedicated to keeping their allies topped off on health, you're going to get a ton of mileage out of it. We also get the Star Maps feature here, which just lets us cast the Guiding Bolt spell a couple of times per day for free, so a nice little kind of ranged damage option if you need it. Now at level 4, I do think we go back to Cleric for a while for a number of reasons. This would make us a Cleric too. As such, we get 1 use of Channel Divinity per short rest, which we can use now to either turn undead, potentially forcing enemies to run away from us, or better yet, for us as a Life Cleric, we can use it for Preserve Life, which is a nice party-wide heal that we can use as an action to heal 3 times our character level in hit points. Though, note, since it's not a spell, this won't trigger the Star Druid's Chalice Healing, right? It's still a pretty great AoE heal, though, and perfect for our ultimate healer selves. At level 5, we would be a Cleric 3, and that means we get 2nd level Cleric spells, and, we're going to want to take the usuals for a support character: Aid, Lesser Restoration. Prayer of Healing is okay, though only usable outside of combat. I'd say the most important spell for us here is actually going to be Warding Bond. It is the best tank spell in game as far as I'm concerned. You cast it on 1 ally to increase their armor class and their saving throws by 1, but then you share any damage that they take, right? So you take half and they take half anytime they take damage. And for us, for this build, taking damage is no problemo, as we will see in a minute. At level 6, we would be a Cleric 4, and that means we get a feat. I'm going to say let's just bump our Wisdom, taking it either to 18 or to 20, right? If we were to get the +1 from early on in the game and use it for this character, then you could just bump it to 20. But you might have decided to give that +1 bonus to another party member, right? Which in that case, feel free to take a half feat here, I think, that just bumps Wisdom. There aren't a ton of them. In fact, I would probably rather bump Wisdom by 1 to 18 and then bump something else like Constitution if you want, or, your Charisma score for that matter, maybe your Dexterity. You could respec to make those numbers look even. And then at level 7, we would be a Cleric 5. That means we get Destroy Undead. This is a nice way to add some damage to Undead when you use Turn Undead against them, right? But most importantly, we get 3rd level Cleric spells, and that means Revivify in case somebody dies, Mass Healing Word for another group heal that, yes, will benefit from Disciple of Life on every single target that gets healed, right? They would get a 2 + 3 for the spell level, so an extra 5 healing to everybody when you cast it. But then, most importantly for this build, and probably the main reason I wanted to prioritize Cleric in these early levels, we would get Beacon of Hope. This spell is the healer's dream. It requires concentration, it lasts 10 turns, but then says that for any ally affected by it, and we can apply it to all of our allies, they have advantage on Wisdom saving throws, that's really nice, and on Death saving throws, cool, but ain't nobody dying with this build in the party, frankly. And then, above all, anytime you heal an ally, they always heal for the maximum amount possible. And this applies to all healing, not just spells. So your Channel Divinity benefits from it, healing potions even, and yes, even your Stars Druid Chalice Healing. And that just really amps up your healing power to 11 now. Bringing someone back even from the brink of death is a cakewalk, and keeping everybody just topped off between your spells, your Channel Divinity, and your Chalice Healing is just a breeze. So at level 8, I'm going to say, you know, before getting back to Druid, we should take one more Cleric level here, because at Cleric 6, we get another Channel Divinity charge per short rest for even more like group healing power. And as a life cleric, we get the very potent Blessed Healer ability, which essentially heals us for the same amount that our Disciple of Life feature heals others, right? 2 plus the level of spell that we've cast, but it's any time we cast a healing spell on someone else. So now we just shrug off any damage that we might have been taking from having Warding Bond on somebody, right? Because anytime we heal somebody else with a spell, we're going to heal ourselves as well. So we almost never need to use our resources to keep ourselves topped off, especially thanks to the fact that some of our things are like group-wide heals, right? Which we're going to benefit from too. And yeah, when we cast a spell, we get that Chalice healing. You know, we might have topped off our ally with the spell, so we can use the Chalice healing on us. It's so fun, honestly, to just kind of be playing whack-a-mole with health bars here, I think, because it makes it so easy to do. And it just feels like really powerful, like you're kind of invincible. Now, I think at level 9 for this build, I would go back to Druid, making us a Druid 3. You could definitely stay Cleric. We will never be able to get to 6th level spells here, since we've taken 2 levels of Druid, right? We're not going to be a Cleric 11. We're not going to get the ultimate healing spell, Heal, right? But honestly, we don't really need it. Our healing is already so potent, and sure, Divine Intervention at Cleric 10 is awesome, but I mean, you can only use that once per game, right? So I think I would just as soon pick up some additional utility and support functionality from Druid personally. As a Druid 3, then, we get 2nd level Druid spells, and go ahead and PYF here, right? Again, probably focusing on utility and control options. Pass Without Trace is really nice if your entire party needs to be sneaky, for example. But then at level 10, we would be a Druid 4. We get another feat, and if we haven't maxed out our wisdom yet, then let's do that here. But if we have, I'd probably pick up Resilient Constitution so that I could be proficient in Constitution saves and thus concentration checks, right? To make sure that I always hold on to Beacon of Hope. At level 11, we would be a Druid 5, and that means we get Wild Strike, which we won't really use. That's a thing that, you know, benefits our attacks when we're shapeshifted. But we do get 3rd level Druid spells, and that lets us pick up fun stuff like Call Lightning, Sleet Storm, Plant Growth. But then at level 12, we would be a Druid 6, and as a Stars Druid, we get the main thing that I came back to Druid for, which is Cosmic Omen. This says that 3 times per day, as a reaction, we can either increase or decrease any ability check, attack roll, or saving throw by a d6. And that is like super bardic inspiration. It's awesome. I mean, you're definitely better off preventing an ally from taking damage in the first place than trying to heal it up after the fact, right? Or maybe ensuring that you can make your concentration check when you really need to, or that someone in your party makes their saving throw against being paralyzed by hold person, or sure, ensuring that an enemy fails their save against hold person, right, etc. It's just a super powerful and infinitely useful ability that rounds off the best healer build in the game with some fantastic like non-healer support capabilities, and I love it. So yeah, throw this build into any party. It makes a great Shadowheart, as long as she's okay not being quite so dark and emo, or anybody else for that matter. And, you know, having them in the party, you just laugh at your enemies as they try in vain to just really hurt anyone significantly. You're going to keep the whole party in tip-top shape throughout the game, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, let's then do our last build for the day, going to like the opposite side of the light-dark dichotomy and explore the new Shadow Sorcerer. I really love Larian's take on the Shadow Sorcerer, with one exception. It's not too different from the D&D Shadow Sorcerer that we've got. They're super flavorful though. I mean, everyone loves a Shadowfell motif, right? Ooh, so edgy. Maybe this would make a good Shadowheart. But I think this subclass best lends itself to a bit of like Blaster from the Shadows playstyle. This might not necessarily be the hardest hitting build that I've ever done, but it is really fun, really versatile, cool, and is capable of putting out both some solid sustained and burst damage. So we'd start off at level 1 as a sorcerer for our starting class, enjoying the Constitution saving throw proficiency they get, which will help us hold on to our concentration, among other things. For our ability scores, let's go with a 15 Charisma, take a +2 there, a 15 Constitution and a +1 there, and then a 14 Dexterity. As for the equipment we're going to be using on this build, we're going to want to be in the best medium armor that we can get, as well as the best shield we can find, and then really just any gear that increases our crit chance especially, or hit chance if not. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything that adds damage to spell attacks. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Anyways, as a Sorcerer 1, we get our subclass right at the beginning, which is awesome. And yes, of course, we're going with the Shadow Sorcerer, which gives us a couple of features. First, we get Strength of the Grave. This says that once per day when we hit 0 hit points, we instead drop to 1. That's not bad. It'll save our bacon once in a while. And then we get Eyes of the Dark, which gives us dark vision out to 80 feet. As for the spells that we would want to take at Sorcerer 1, there are a ton of great options, of course, but I'd say the must-haves here are the Shield spell for defensive purposes, of course, and then Chromatic Orb, which is a nice bit of burst damage that can do Thunder, Cold, Fire, Lightning, Acid, or Poison, and we get to choose when we cast it, right? And that's going to be important later on. At level 2, I think I would take some Warlock levels. Yeah, we're going to be a bit of a Sorelock here, which makes a lot of sense if we're focused on being a ranged blaster. So as a Warlock 1 here, we get to pick our subclass right at level 1 also, right? That's awesome. And even though I did do a full build for them just a couple weeks ago, I think I would probably take Hexblade here. Great Old One or Fiend would be decent options too, but I like the damage potential from Hexblade, even on this build. Not really because it lets us get a Hex weapon and then use our Charisma for attacks with it, right? Though, sure, that's not a bad thing to have just in case you do need to be in melee making attacks. But I really like that as a Hexblade we get medium armor and shield proficiency from the Hex Warrior feature, so now we can, have a much better AC. And then Hexblade's Curse provides a nice bit of single target burst damage, saying that we can curse a target as a bonus action once per short rest, and thereafter all of our attacks against that target do extra damage equal to our proficiency bonus. Also, when that target dies, we get some hit points back. It's just a nice way to help take down like the most important target when we really need it. As for Warlock spells to pick up here, just be sure and grab Eldritch Blast, that fantastic cantrip with a nice long range that fires multiple beams every time we cast it, at least once we hit level 5, right? It's 1 for now, 2 beams at level 5, and then 3 at level 11. And I would also grab the Hex spell here, I think, which adds a d6 of damage to every attack we make against a target at the cost of a bonus action to cast, a bonus action to transfer to the next enemy once our target dies, and our concentration. Still, it will add some nice damage to all of those Eldritch Blasts that we're going to be landing, if and when we want to use our concentration for it. More on that in a second. At level 3, we would be a Warlock 2, and that means we get Eldritch Invocations, and I would want to grab Agonizing Blast, which will add our Charisma modifier and damage to every hit of our Eldritch Blast, right? That's really nice. And then Repelling Blast, which will push an enemy 10 feet away when we hit them with Eldritch Blast. Both super solid, super useful. But that's all I really want to get out of Warlock though. I wouldn't mind taking another level or 3 to get my spell slots up since they reset on a short rest, right? That's nice. But there are more important things in Sorcerer that I need first. So at this level, we would go back to Sorcerer. We'd be a Sorcerer 2. We get 1 sorcery point now per Sorcerer level and then 2 meta magic options to enhance our spell casting. I would probably pick Twin Spell, which lets us cast a spell on 2 targets if it normally only targets 1. So unfortunately, Eldritch Blast doesn't work because, you can target multiple enemies with it at level 5, right? But something like Chromatic Orb could be twinned, for example, and that could be really good. But then for the second option, I think I'd probably take Distant Spell to double the range of a spell that we cast. It might be nice in a pinch if we need to hit someone that's really far away. I mean, that would give Eldritch Blast a range of 120 feet, which could be really cool sometimes. But at level 5, we would be a Sorcerer 3, and that means we get another meta magic option, and that means we can get the most important one of them all, Quickened Spell. Quickened Spell lets us cast a spell that normally has a casting time of an action as a bonus action, but alas, it is one of the few things that got nerfed in BG3 compared to D&D, right? It costs a very hefty 3 sorcery points instead of 2. That's all of our sorcery points right now. But this is important to remember. Not only can you cannibalize your spell slots to regain sorcery points, you can just like cannibalize your spell slots to stockpile sorcery points before you're even in combat, right? And get more sorcery points than you're typically allowed to have. I like to keep a healthy heaping of them on hand, especially since our Warlock spell slots reset on a short rest, right? And those can be used to create sorcery points for us too. Doing this costs our bonus action, so if you have to do it in combat, it can really kind of slow down your damage. But then, yes, at this level, we would also get second level Sorcerer spells, and Shadow Sorcerers get 2 here for free that I need to talk about. They get the Darkness spell, and then they get a special version of Darkness called Eyes of the Dark. With Eyes of the Dark, it's the Darkness spell, but you cast it using 2 sorcery points. And then if you do that, you can see in the magical darkness, just like if you had the Devil's Sight invocation from Warlock, right? And I love that we didn't need to take that invocation so that we could get both Agonizing and Repelling Blast instead. Now, there are a lot of differences to how the Darkness spell works in D&D and how it works in BG3, and it has a huge impact on how we play this character, so get cozy as we get into the weeds a little bit here. First off, you cast the spell as an action, it requires our concentration, and then it just makes like a 20-foot sort of sphere of darkness on the battlefield. It just stays there all the time. You can't cast it on a thing and then move that thing and have the darkness move like you can in D&D, right? Anybody that's within that sphere is blinded, unless of course they have some sort of ability that lets them see inside it. The tooltip for the spell says that you cannot make ranged attacks into or out of the area of darkness, but that's not entirely true. You can't make ranged weapon attacks into it, no, but enemies can throw weapons at you if you're inside, and that's not technically making a ranged weapon attack, right? Thrown attacks are different. What's more, if you can see in your magical darkness, you can make ranged attacks from within the darkness, like with Eldritch Blasts, for example, against enemies who are standing outside. And again, if we cast the Eyes of the Dark version of the spell, or sure, if we had taken the Devil's Sight invocation, then we can see inside that darkness spell, and thus can make ranged attacks against those without and within it, as long as they're in range. The great part about that, of course, is that if your enemy can't see you, then you will have advantage on attacks against them, and their attacks against you will have disadvantage as well. This, again, though, is a little bit complicated. In D&D, it's pretty straightforward. Unless the enemies specifically have an ability that allows them to see in magical darkness, they can't see you, and they suffer and you benefit, as I've stated. Full stop. Plain old dark vision is not going to do them any good in D&D. In Baldur's Gate 3, though, it's a little weird. If an enemy has just regular dark vision and they're standing outside of the area of the darkness spell, kind of looking at you within it, they don't suffer disadvantage on attacks against you, and your attacks won't have advantage against them. It's really annoying. Now, they still won't be able to make ranged weapon attacks against you, but they might try to throw things at you if they can. For that reason, if you're fighting enemies that have dark vision, you can examine them beforehand, right? So you know. The best thing to do here is to cast the darkness spell on top of them, because in that case, they will still get the blinded condition, whether they have dark vision or not. And you will enjoy advantage on your attacks, and they will suffer disadvantage on theirs until they are out of the spell's area, at least. So in that case, cast darkness on top of them before combat starts if you can, then run inside the darkness, Eldritch Blast, right? Quicken Eldritch Blast, and then stand right next to them so that you can get an opportunity attack against them when they try to run away on their turn, and you can do that with your Hex weapon, right? Meaning that you're going to have a solid chance to hit, and hopefully all of that should be enough damage to kill most enemies. Make sure when you're doing this, to turn off Repelling Blast so that you don't hit them with Eldritch Blast and shove them outside of the darkness area. Unless, of course, the range of their dark vision isn't that big, because if they only have a 12-foot range on their dark vision, and you can see that when you examine them, well, you could cast darkness like a little further away from them, maybe stand on the far end of it if need be, and then hit them and shove them back even so that you can continue to enjoy advantage. They're not going to be able to see you if you are in the darkness outside of the range of their dark vision, right? And I guess I should add, try and get the Knife of the Mountain King from the Githyanki vendor in the Kresh in Act 1, kind of later in Act 1, right? As soon as possible. That gives you advantage when you make attacks in dim light or darkness, any attacks, whether you're using the weapon to make those attacks or not. Plus, it increases your crit chance, which is great, among other things. This way, you can at least always have advantage on your attacks if you're in darkness, regardless of whether or not the enemy has dark vision. Okay, clear as mud? Yeah, I don't really like the way they coded things for this spell in the game, but we can still make it work. And of course, if you don't want to deal with all of that and you're fighting a whole group of enemies and they all have dark vision, you could always just concentrate on Hex instead and enjoy extra damage on every one of your Eldritch Blasts. Because yeah, we're level 5 now, Eldritch Blast fires 2 beams every single time you use it. At level 6, we would be a Sorcerer 4, meaning we get another feat, and I would say let's bump Charisma if you took a +1 to Charisma from the place that you can get a +1 to any stat in the game, right? I don't want to do spoilers if I can help it. Otherwise, if you gave that +1 to somebody else or you made a different choice, then I would probably just, again, take like a +1 Charisma here, take it to 18, and then a +1 to something else that you really want. But then at level 7, we would be a Sorcerer 5, and that means we get 3rd level Sorcerer spells. And while there are plenty of great ones to choose from, sure, grab Fireball to improve your area of effect, burst damage potential, etc. The one that I'll make special mention of here is Haste. Haste is amazing, as everybody knows, giving you a whole extra action on your turn for lots of extra blasting, among other benefits. The problem with Haste, of course, is that it requires concentration, as does Darkness, as does Hex. So the question is, which spell should you concentrate on? If you're low on sorcery points and or spell slots with which to make them, I'd say go Hex. It's a bummer to lose out on advantage and disadvantage, right, from Darkness, but maybe especially in a fight where all the enemies have dark vision, enjoying some extra damage every hit is pretty nice. And hey, maybe with the aforementioned Undermountain knife, right, you can find a patch of shadow to stand in and enjoy advantage anyways, pushing the enemies away from you as you constantly try and keep them at bay. Maybe in that case, spending an occasional sorcery point to do the distant spell thing, right? So you can really just kind of keep everyone away, maybe kite them, etc. The Darkness spell, though, is kind of my favorite way to play this build especially, and it just feels cool and fun and flavorful. And depending on the battlefield and the enemies, the advantage-disadvantage thing, plus, no ranged weapon attacks being able to be made against you is really, really nice. But Haste is definitely worth considering as well. If you have the 3rd level spell slot to spare, it's going to lead to a lot of extra blasting and pushing, and sure, with distant spell, again, you could stand really far away and make attacks with impunity for a long time if you're knocking them back every time especially, right? So try it out, and don't be afraid to switch up the spell that you're using depending on the battlefield. But at level 8, we'd be a Sorcerer 6, and as a Shadow Sorcerer, our motivation to stick with Darkness increases because we get the Hound of Ill Omen. And this is a pretty cool little feature. It's very different than it is in D&D. So you summon a hound with 3 sorcery points, and then it's just kind of a permanent pet for you until it dies. It's relatively tanky for a pet, and it has 2 main actions that it can take. It can try to entangle enemies that are, within a 10-foot radius, doing a little damage and potentially immobilizing them on a failed save, or it can just bite them. Both are pretty decent, but the bite does better single target damage and then forces them to make a Constitution saving throw, and if they fail, then they get an omen placed on them. The omen is random, and it's either acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder, or poison based, and then thereafter, for the next 3 turns, if that creature takes damage of that same type of the omen, right, then you regain a sorcery point. It's pretty nice, and was the reason I said to make sure you grab Chromatic Orb at the beginning, because if you recall, that spell can do any of these same damage types we choose when we cast it. So we can wait to see what kind of omen gets applied on the bite, and then follow up with a Chromatic Orb of the appropriate damage type to regain sorcery points. It's pretty awesome combo. And if you're going to be doing that, might as well twin it and, do some burst damage to a couple of different targets. My favorite thing about this version of the Hound, though, is that when they get hit by a melee attack that doesn't do radiant damage, they can use a reaction to create a splinter or clone of themselves. That's pretty much an exact replica. They're not as tanky, but the only other difference is that you don't have control of this splinter Hound, right? They just act on their turn and do what they want, attacking your enemies, basically. The best part, though, is that even those splinters can themselves create splinters when they get hit. And just playing around with it just a little bit last night, I was pretty regularly getting 2 or 3 little Hound pets that pretty quickly kind of overwhelmed my enemies and just zerged them down. It was a lot of fun. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention, the Hound can see inside of your darkness spell too. So they also enjoy the same advantage-disadvantage benefits as you do, so long as they can stay inside the area of the darkness spell at least, and that can be really nice. Okay, now, at level 9. I'm of two minds here, as usual. On the one hand, we could go back to Warlock. The level 6 Hexblade feature also lets you summon a pet when you kill your cursed target specifically, and actually, if you move your Hound close to that pet, that specter, then the specter magically gains the ability to splinter as well when it gets attacked. It's kind of weird. I don't know if it's intentional, but it's a fun interaction. The only problem is the specter kind of sucks. It really does. It's immobile. You can't control it. I've never seen it be all that effective in combat, personally. I think instead I would rather just stick with Sorcerer for more sorcery points and more and better spells. Or maybe, just maybe take a couple fighter levels here. You certainly don't have to. But I guess I kind of see this character as, like a burst damage blaster. There's a lot of burst potential here, so I like the idea of getting Action Surge, so at least once per turn we can throw down another round of Eldritch Blasts, usually on a cursed target, right? Before long we're going to be firing 3 beams, and if we've got Hexblade's Curse, and especially if we've got Hex up too, that is a healthy heaping of damage with every casting of Eldritch Blast, right? And being able to do it 3 times between Action Surge and Quicken Spell, that's just a boatload of damage. Feel free instead, if you want, to just go back to Sorcerer or, do something else entirely. But yeah, I think I'd probably take a couple levels of Fighter, grab the defense fighting style at Fighter 1, right, to increase our armor class, get the second wind so that we can heal ourselves with a bonus action once per short rest. And then, at level 10, we'd be a Fighter 2, we get Action Surge so that once per short rest, we can take 2 actions. That is infinitely useful and potentially very deadly. But then, at level 11, I would here, I think, go back to Sorcerer, making us a Sorcerer 7. There's some great 4th level Sorcerer spells that we could get here. Go ahead and PYF, right? But then, also we get more sorcery points for more quickened Eldritch Blasts, among other things. That's really nice. Don't forget, level 11, that's when our Eldritch Blast becomes 3 beams every time we cast it. And then at level 12, we'd be a Sorcerer 8, and we get another feat. I'd probably take Warcaster, I think, if you have a maxed out Charisma, so that we can enjoy advantage on our concentration checks. But if you gave that +1 to an ability score to someone else in your party, then sure, make sure you cap Charisma here. And that is it for our Emo Blaster Caster. And that is a wrap on another round of BG3 builds. I know, there are so many more to get to that I didn't have time for. So if you want me to keep making these, please let me know in the comments. And if you don't want me to keep making these, let me know that as well. I'm kind of in a wait and see pattern right now with BG3 content, but as long as these videos keep performing well, I'll keep making them. And hey, you can always ask questions in the comments below, or better yet, join as a member and take the conversation and build theory crafting and questions to the Discord server, where there's always lots of lively discussion. So, I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me and for this channel. I truly, truly appreciate it. I hope you have a great day and a fantastic week. And if you don't, man, I really hope that you will not give up. Please hang in there. You've got this. I hope that you will do good and that you'll be kind and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Tom, get your plane right on time. I know your part'll go fine. Fly down to Mexico. Da do do da da do do, and here I am, the only living boy in New York. I get the news I need on the weather report. Favorite Simon and Garfunkel song? Ready, go. That might be mine. The Only Living Boy in New York. It's probably that or Kathy's song. But there's so many good ones to choose from. Okay. Which is, that's 2 plus the spell, 2 plus the spell. Let's then do our last bout. Let's. You okay, buddy?
What?
You okay?
Yeah.
I'm trying to record and I can hear you.
I just said in a minute.
So you're going to be in the outtakes now.
Okay. What if I choose to?
Level 2, a Constitution saving throw. My favorite thing about this version of the Hound, and just say, on return and just really blast. Huge shout out.